It usually hits in the morning. You wake up, reach for your phone, and within 5 seconds you already feel behind. Behind on success, behind on love, behind on health, purpose, clarity, confidence, everything. You scroll past a friend who just got engaged, a coworker who got promoted, a stranger who bought a house, climbed a mountain, started a business, wrote a book. You look around at your life. Same room, same job, same questions, and something inside quietly whispers, "I'm late." Not to a meeting, to your own life. You feel like you missed something. A signal, a deadline, an invisible starting gun that fired without you hearing it. And now, everyone else seems to be running ahead, and you're just standing still. But no one talks about this, because it's not loud, it's not dramatic. It's not even always obvious, it's subtle, internal, a quiet panic that follows you like a shadow. At work, in relationships, during lunch, in the shower. I should be further. I'm falling behind. Everyone else is passing me. This isn't just comparison. It's not just envy. It's deeper. It's existential. It's the feeling that your life, your only life, is somehow out of sync with what it could be, with what it should be. You're not sure who decided the pace, but you're terrified you've already lost the race. There's a name for this. It's called the existential gap, the space between where you are and where you believe you should be. And the more you stare into that gap, the more it starts to swallow your joy, your confidence, your clarity. And here's the haunting part. You're not actually behind. You're just measuring yourself against a timeline that was never yours. In this video, we're not going to tell you to hustle harder. We're not going to offer morning routines, vision boards, or 10-step plans. We're going to go deeper, to the roots. Because the feeling of being behind isn't about speed. It's about meaning. It's about identity. It's about how far you've drifted from the rhythm of your own soul. So if you've ever looked at your life and thought, "This isn't where I thought I'd be," you're not alone. And more importantly, you're not broken. You're just waking up to the truth that the life you've been racing toward may not be the one that was ever meant for you. The real crisis isn't that you're behind. The real crisis is that you believe you're supposed to be somewhere else, that by this age, by this point, by this chapter, you should have more, be more, know more. But who wrote that script? Who decided what 25, 30, 40 was supposed to look like? Who told you success had an expiration date? This is the existential gap, the distance between your present reality and your imagined timeline. And the longer you stare across that gap, the more it begins to whisper, "You're failing. You're late. You're less." But here's the truth. You're not failing. You're comparing your life to a schedule that was designed without your soul in mind. We inherit timelines like we inherit last names. Graduate at 22, career by 25, married by 30, house, kids, purpose, passion, all perfectly staged by 35. But life doesn't follow PowerPoint. It unfolds. It spirals. It burns and rebuilds and detours and waits. The timeline you're chasing, it might not even be yours. It might belong to your parents, your culture, your school, your Instagram feed. We confuse these external milestones with internal worth. But milestones don't measure meaning. They measure compliance. And the soul doesn't comply. It awakens on its own time. So no, you're not late. You're living a different rhythm. Maybe slower, maybe messier, but maybe also more honest. Because the people who look on time are often the ones most out of touch with their truth. They're ahead on the outside, but lost on the inside. You don't need more speed. You need more alignment. The existential gap is not a sign that you're behind. It's a signal that something deeper is ready to emerge. That the life you've been living is too small for the self you're becoming. And if that feels terrifying, it's because it is. But it's also sacred. So where did these expectations come from? Why do we all feel this silent pressure to be somewhere else? Let's go back to the thinkers who tried to answer that question. Before you blame yourself for falling behind, Ask a better question. Who built the clock you're running from? Because you weren't born feeling late. You were taught it, programmed into it, dropped into a world where time equals worth, and your pace is compared to people you've never met. This is not just a cultural problem, it's a philosophical one. Let's explore the thinkers who decoded this quiet crisis. Heidegger, thrownness and the illusion of the schedule. Martin Heidegger believed you were thrown into the world, not chosen, not planned, thrown into a body, into a country, into a timeline you didn't ask for. From birth, you're handed scripts. What's normal, what's good, what's on time. But living authentically, he said, means questioning that inheritance. Are you late, or were you never supposed to follow that map to begin with? Heidegger warned that most people live as the they, borrowing timelines, opinions, identities, and then wondering why nothing feels real. Sartre, Bad Faith and the Myth of the Role. Jean-Paul Sartre said we lie to ourselves to avoid the burden of freedom. We adopt roles, the good child, the successful professional, the perfect partner. And then we panic when our real selves don't fit those costumes. Sartre called it bad faith, when you betray your truth to fulfill a story someone else wrote. The result? Anxiety, fakeness, that constant creeping sense that you're not where you're meant to be because you're not. You're in character, not in truth. Frankl, meaning not milestones. Viktor Frankl didn't care how old you were when you achieved something. He cared if your life meant something to you. He survived Auschwitz not by keeping up, but by anchoring himself to a why. Life is never made unbearable by circumstances, but only by lack of meaning and purpose. Feeling behind isn't always a sign you're failing. Sometimes it's your soul asking, are you chasing what matters, or just what's expected? Nietzsche, Eternal Return and Choosing. Again, Nietzsche posed a brutal question. If you had to live this exact life again, forever, would you? Not just the good parts, all of it. If your answer is no, you might not be behind. You might be asleep. He believed freedom wasn't doing whatever you want. It was choosing your life, fully, affirming it, even if it's hard, even if it's late, because the life you affirm is the only one that becomes yours. The pattern all. These thinkers arrive at the same unsettling truth. You're not late. You're unclaimed. You've been living someone else's pace, their story, their goals. The feeling of being behind is often the moment your soul starts to resist, not because it's lazy, but because it wants authenticity, not performance. So before you panic, ask whose voice you're measuring your life by. Ask if your timeline reflects your truth or your trauma. Ask if this pressure to catch up is really a longing to slow down. And listen. Now let's leave theory behind. How does this actually look in the world we live in? At work, in relationships, in silence, in suffering. You see it everywhere, but no one says it out loud. In offices, at weddings, on birthdays, in therapy, in passing glances and polite smiles. It's not burnout, it's not jealousy, it's not even depression. It's that slow, aching thought. Thought I'd be somewhere else by now. The overeducated, underfulfilled millennial, he did everything right, got the degree, landed the job, checks all the boxes, but he sits at his desk, scrolling, numbing, half-living, because none of this feels like him. He's not behind in life. He's behind in meaning. The stay-at-home parent with invisible dreams. She loves her children. She chose this path. But at night, in the quiet, there's a whisper she can't shake. Is this all I'm allowed to become? Not because she regrets, but because she's not just a mother. She's an artist, a seeker, a woman with wildness still untouched, and no one ever told her that it's okay to change timelines. The CEO who feels like a fraud, he made it, built the company, made the millions, got the respect. But he looks in the mirror and sees a man who spent 2 decades chasing someone else's definition of success. He's ahead on paper, but behind in soul. The late bloomer who's just beginning. She's 42. She just started therapy, just quit her job, just admitted she's been living a lie. And for the first time, she doesn't feel behind. She feels aligned, because being late to your truth is still showing up, and that's more than most ever do. The algorithm of insecurity: Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, YouTube. Every scroll is a highlight reel, a digital scoreboard, a quiet reminder of where you're supposed to be. But what you're comparing to is a fiction, filtered, staged, monetized. Real life doesn't trend. It unfolds slowly, privately, unevenly. But that's where depth lives. Timeline. Trauma you were told implicitly or directly, you should have it figured out by now. You're wasting your potential. At your age, I had a house and kids. But what if your soul isn't a spreadsheet? What if your timing isn't broken, just different? So many people are suffering not because they've failed, but because they've inherited timelines that betray them. Detours as destinations. Some people need to wander before they wake up. Some need to break down before they break through. Some don't bloom at 25. They bloom at 47, or 63, or after the divorce, or after the diagnosis. The point isn't when, it's whether. Whether you said yes to your becoming at all. There's no gold medal for getting there first. There's only the quiet knowing that you're living your life, not someone else's script. But how does this feeling actually take root inside us? What's happening in the mind when we start believing we're behind? Let's go inward into the psychology of the existential gap. The mind is a meaning-making machine. It needs stories, structures, sequence. But when the story we've been told doesn't match our lived experience, something breaks. It doesn't always scream, it whispers. You're wrong. You're off. You missed something. This is the beginning of the existential gap inside the psyche. Timeline trauma. The inherited clock. From a young age, we internalize messages. Be productive. Stay on schedule. Don't waste time. Know who you are. These messages become embedded timelines, invisible expectations, internalized clocks. But the problem? You weren't born with a clock. You were born with a rhythm. And when you live out of rhythm to chase a clock you didn't set, you don't just feel behind, you feel wrong. The should-voice psychologists call it the superego. Spiritual teachers call it the false self. It's the voice that says, you should be married by now. You should own a house. You should have kids, more money, less weight, more clarity. This voice doesn't guide. It shames. And shame has a dangerous superpower. It doesn't say, you made a mistake. It says, you are the mistake. So when you fall out of sync with the plan, you don't just feel lost, you feel unworthy. Identity diffusion. When the inner voice of meaning is drowned out by outer voices of expectation, you lose touch with who you are. This is identity diffusion, a kind of psychological fog where every path feels like it belongs to someone else. You want to stop and listen, but you're scared, because stopping might mean confronting how long you've been running. The shame spiral, the existential gap, often triggers a downward spiral. I should be further. I'm failing. I've wasted time. I'll never catch up. I don't deserve to try anymore. This spiral doesn't end in laziness, it ends in resignation. You stop dreaming, stop trying, start settling for a life that looks fine but feels like static. The shift from clock to compass, the way out isn't speed, it's silence. It's stepping off the racetrack and into your own center. Psychologically, this is about reconnecting to intuition, inner vision, authentic desire, your sense of time. When you start living from a compass instead of a clock, things shift. You stop asking, am I behind? And start asking, am I true? You may not be late. You may just be the first in your family, culture, or lineage to listen inward. And that is not failure, that is freedom. So how is this inner crisis echoing out into culture? What's happening at a societal level when millions of people feel behind, ashamed, and disconnected from meaning? This isn't just personal, it's cultural. Because when millions of people feel behind, disconnected, disoriented, it's no longer a private crisis. It becomes a collective symptom. the existential gap is not just in your mind, it's in our world. The algorithm of urgency scroll your feed. Everyone's making moves, launching startups, buying homes, living minimalist dream lives in Bali. You're watching 10 timelines unfold at once, but none of them are yours. And the brain doesn't filter. It just absorbs. They're ahead. I'm behind. What you don't see. The chaos behind the curation. The breakdowns between the breakthroughs. The people who look on time but feel off track. Social media is a theater of arrival, but life is a backstage process. Capitalism and clockwork identity. The system doesn't reward soul pace. It rewards speed. How quickly can you scale? How early did you succeed? How fast did you bounce back? This obsession with first creates a world where arriving slowly, honestly or late is seen as weakness. So we rush, we fake it, we perform progress, we wear success like a costume while feeling empty inside, and when it all collapses, no one knows how to talk about it, because being behind feels like shame. The quiet rebellion. But something is changing. More people are leaving high-paying jobs for meaningful work, choosing therapy over productivity hacks, prioritizing slow, living rest and spiritual depth, starting later, pivoting harder, questioning more. The quiet rebellion isn't loud, it's personal. It's people saying, I'd rather feel late and real than on time and hollow. This isn't laziness, it's awakening. Mental health and the existential breakdown. Why are anxiety, burnout, and depression surging in the most advanced societies? Because our outer lives are moving faster than our inner lives can keep up. We're not just tired, we're misaligned. We're living timelines that our souls didn't choose. And the body knows. The spirit knows. The symptoms are messengers. But what if the cure isn't in catching up, but in stepping off the track? What if you're not late? You're just the first in your world to choose a different kind of time. So what does it look like to close this gap? To live without racing, comparing, or performing. Let's end where all real alignment begins, with stillness, surrender, and self-trust. So what if you're not behind? What if you're exactly where you need to be to finally start listening, to slow down, to stop performing, to start becoming? You don't owe the world a timeline. You don't owe strangers your milestones. You don't owe yourself an apology for being human. The only thing you owe is your honesty. And honesty sounds like this. I don't want their life. I don't want their pace. I don't want to arrive early to a place I was never meant to be. The truth? No one is ahead. No one is behind. We're all just walking through different forests. Some well lit, some dense and overgrown. And the only way to get lost is to start following someone else's path instead of trusting your own. There is no right age to bloom, no correct path to peace, no universal clock to validate your becoming. You are allowed to take time, to pivot, to rest, to begin again at 19 or 49, because the soul isn't linear. It's seasonal. Some winters last longer than expected. But spring always comes. So the next time the voice says, "You're behind," answer it with stillness. Answer it with grace. Answer it with the quiet power of someone who finally stopped running and started listening. You are not late. You are becoming, not at their pace, at yours. And that is not failure. That is freedom.